is me, as the one, the only, the Paul Friends, welcoming you to Starfleet Universe On Call. And tonight it is me, and Dave's there too. Just for those who are listening at home, yes, the Rams are currently winning the game for the Thursday night football NFL game. Rams 21, Vikings 17, and it's almost halftime. And hopefully you won't hear another update. Of course, it's a podcast. If you listen to the podcast, you go, well, who cares? Because I already know what the score was. I already know what happened. But hey, if you're live, you know that more is going on than meets the eye. Okay. Tonight, we are going to be discussing a concept which I have on my mind. It's combination of kind of like Fortnite, and I'm not saying that this will be like Fortnite with all the whatever. But the whole idea of Fortnite is, well, actually, Fortnite actually is not a never-ending game. I forget. There are some games that are basically they're never-ending. They always continue on and on and on and on. They never stop. Fortnite is you have a single battle against a lot of opponents, and then after a certain period of time, the battle ends. Now, obviously, what I want to do can do exactly the same thing. You can have it so you start a game, it has a certain amount of time, and then you finish the game. Because some of the aspects to the game, in my mind, require a timer. But so it is going to be time limited to at least to a certain degree when it comes to the game, the turns as they go on. It's going to continue to move forward, whether you're ready or not. But so just a quick update on other things, real quick, and then we'll actually get to our main topic. That one, I'm not gonna say slacking because I've not really been slacking. I've just been very, very, very busy for the past week. So I've had the only time I had time to actually do anything really, possibly Tuesday, mainly Wednesday, but Wednesday I was yesterday I was just not having it. I was had some kind of nose thing, and I had a big headache. Even with some sleep, I still felt tired. So it's like, okay, that's it. I just watched my O's, play against Boston to watch them win. Yay! I know for those of you out there, it's like O's versus Boston Red Sox. Oh, Boston Red Sox is going to win. Yeah, you would think that. But their Sale was pitching, and he didn't do a great job. He didn't do an awful job. I've seen worse for a starting pitcher. Watch the Orioles. But obviously their relievers need something to be desired, and as Buster Only has said, it's a concern there. But I digress. So I haven't got much done. I still want to work on the recording part. I wanted to get the recording part kind of fixed to the degree where other people can use it and it will work properly. And if I had it working properly, then people could use it because then people could play back their games. And there's certain things, as I mentioned before, about that I want to fix, but I'm not concerned right off the bat. Something I might want to change. I definitely want to change later. The whole idea of the timing of it when it plays back, it doesn't play back in quite a time-based order, where some things go faster than other things. Now, just each of the playback records, whether it's just changing the speed, or it is actually moving your ship. That playing back that same record takes the same amount of time. That's that's the simplest way of doing it to start with. So, but anyway, that's, to me, that's minor compared to actually getting it to work. And getting it to it records properly. It's not that it records properly, it plays back properly. I'm not sure what exactly the issue is, but I want to look into it. Videos, of course. I'm doing my best to try to record some things we'll just have to wait and see how that all turns out in the end. When it comes to, I, having an automated way of, actually, I still have to look at OBS. There's an automated way to start and recording from the command line, because obviously that's kind of critical if I want to do an automatic recording or some way of communicating that so it automatically records. Now, obviously, if I have the recording within the client, then it becomes a non-issue. You don't get to stream it, but at the very least, you get to record it later, and I can play it back on my own whenever I need to, and then record that and have it so that I can tweak. So you won't see things live, but you'll at least see recordings, and there'll be more videos. And obviously, if I wanted to, at that point, depends upon the game, I could actually do some commentary on that game. I think that'd be kind of cool. Now, going back, I still got my streaming rig right behind me, which is quite cool. One thing I found out about my quote unquote hard coded link, my hardwired link, it's not that hard. Yeah, I got what's called a power line, and when it rains, it seems like the power line gets a little flaky. So I'm not exactly sure if I'm getting a short somewhere. I'm hoping that's not it, but it's definitely introducing noise into the line to the point where the power line gets flaky. So lose packets and all those kind of things. Lose connections, which is not good. But anyhow, so that that being it, I still want to do, at the very least, try to get so we have at least a chat available live. A live chat will be perfect. Will be a live chat and just watch the game. Even if it's just the counters, and not actually be able to see the ships. It would be a beginning, which would be great. I'm not sure at the moment whether I want to focus on. Obviously, I want to focus on recording. Also, I need to work on the Starfleet Warlord aid. There's actually some people who found some bugs, and I need to work on fixing those bugs so they can use the client with certainty that one of the things that currently is wrong with the aid is that there are certain orders that it doesn't quite know the proper syntax of the order. So what happens is it turns red. So it turns red to indicate that it's an invalid order. Relatively, a simple aesthetic that will help people to identify, okay, yeah, I entered in something wrong. Okay, great. I think that is the best one. Now, obviously, the biggest issue with this of having to turn red is if you're colorblind. Like my father was colorblind, and actually colorblind when it comes to red. So a red light, that's not a red light, it's a gray light. When you're not, see, that's the funny part in my mind, is that if you're not colorblind, it's hard to tell. Actually, hard to see things as if you're colorblind. Obviously, I've not looked for this, so I'm sure there's someone screaming out there. Oh, there's a red cold program to do this, and it's possible. I was thinking about it, on the computers. In theory, you should be able to do something like that. You should be able to create a filter that plays on your display, so that you're able to show those things as if you're colorblind to red. I know there's a red color blindness. I'm not sure if there's any other color blindness that can occur. If you can do blue or green, whatever. As I said, that's one thing I'd have to look up. That's why I don't want to talk too much about different kinds of color blindness. Now, with that behind me, so I want to work on that aid a little bit, and hopefully I can get those minor fixes out the door so they can do that. And they can do reinstall, and they'll be all good, because some people, that's one of those, yeah. So people can uninstall their client and reinstall it, and they'll be good to go when it comes to the fixes. because that's one thing that I've changed a little bit just because of security. And that is, I no longer update the client directly for like period. I don't update the client directly anymore. The main reason being because of Windows and the Mac, they don't allow you to do it. I could probably do it on like a Linux box, because on a Linux box, it doesn't have to install it in like an environment where it requires root to actually install. That's always the tough part about doing a Java-based program. That is to get those escalated privileges that are required to install things, or at least to update things. So now, obviously, with a Mac or Microsoft, what would be really cool is I could put it in the stores. But I already tried to do that with the Mac App Store. They went, "Hey, do you have a license with a Paramount?" And I went, "No. Well, I'm sub-licensing it from somebody else who has a license." And I said, "Well, we need the contract to prove that you actually have a license." And I went, "Well, I don't have a contract." And Steve Cole said, "Oh, give me contact information. Give me their email address. I'll email them." It's like, well, the problem is they don't have an email address. When it comes to contacting Apple, you have to actually go through the contact website, which is for app developers, and do it that way. So, unfortunately, so I've kind of given up on that idea. I still have to do that, don't I? I actually probably should do it sooner or later, because Steve Cole's going on surgery. That is the whole idea of what happens if he kicks the bucket. Not to be morose. It's I call it being a friends thing, which is we're able to discuss, seem morose without really, we seem being blasé about it, but we're just being matter of fact about it. Okay, what happens if this happens, and just discuss it. I said, no, we're not being morose. We're called planning. But anyhow, moving on. Let's get on to the main topic for tonight. The main topic for tonight being the idea about a never-ending game. Now, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, this could be a never-ending game, or it could just be a timed game. Especially, there's one thing I've been working on some of the details of this, and some of it I really like. It's basically, it's my SFU ships concept, but on a more interactive level. Now, of course, the question is how many people will be interested in this. The only way to find that out is, in my mind, is to create the game for myself and see if anybody would want to play. Now, obviously, I wanted to start with the core. What is the core of Starfleet battles? Okay, the core is, of course, weapons, a ship that flies with the weapons. The weapons have certain arcs. That's one of those core concepts. And of course, a ship has shields. And that is critical to the whole core of SFP. Why is it critical? Why is it one of those core concepts? What I consider a core concept. I consider that a core concept because of one thing. And that is, because of shields, you are forced to turn. It creates a certain tactical element to the game that if you hadn't just one just generic shield that went around your ship, and as soon as you knock down the shield, the only reason to turn or turn to a certain way is to have your weapons a certain way. And no, And then, well, actually, if you okay, if you go back to uh, not, jeez, sorry, I'm blanking on it now. Starmada, that's it. Dang it, that's it. Starmada, and that is I think this was the original Starmada. No, I think that's the version 2, that which is the Nova. Yeah, the Nova edition. The Nova edition, they removed the concept of shield arc. Now, I'll have to admit that the original Starmada that had the SFB background material in it wasn't that great either, because of the way the shields work and overall, because the shields, the whole idea of a shield isn't that it had it so that you damaged it and then you got to the internals of the ship. And Star Armada, it was just a modifier of see if you actually got damaged internal or not, which is a totally different concept when it comes to SFB. I mean, it's not well, totally different concept of tactically. So, given that, it's important to have arc based. In other words, you have your six six shields. Yeah, you shield them 1 through 4, and covering the different arcs. And given shields that have arcs and weapons that have arcs, that defines your tactical possibilities. It defines how you move things. Now, that's why another. Now, there's okay. Those are a couple of core elements, and obviously the other one is movement and how quickly you actually move about the board. Another now. There's another core concept in my mind when it comes to SFP, which is the whole thing of an impulse chart. In that, the way you move, it's a proportional. What I call it is a proportional movement system. That is that you move on certain impulses based on your speed. Now, unlike just movement point based games like Silent Death is the one that always comes to mind, because I know some of you go, Silent Death. What is Silent Death? Silent Death is actually a pretty old game. At this point, I've not actually checked to see Silent Death still is in existence, but I know like BattleTech is, and I'm not. I feel pretty confident that they would not change the movement system when it comes to BattleTech. And that is, you have a certain number of movement points where you can move per turn, and then you go, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom. And at the end of the turn, you're at that location. SFB doesn't work like that. If you're moving speed, let's say you're moving speed 4, and another person is moving speed 8, and you're both starting at a starting line. This is the way I always explain it. And then slowly, what happens is the person moving speed 8 slowly runs past, gains ground, or not gains ground, but add separation to the person moving 4. It's not like all of a sudden there's 0 and then there's 4. No, it's there's 0 and then slowly becomes 1, then comes 2, and then becomes 3, and then it comes 4. Slowly that occurs. So that's another core concept for me, which is the whole impulse movement system. And then and of course, there's the ability to do action based on whatever impulse that you want. You don't do actions only at the end or only at the beginning. You can do them anywhere in those impulses. So those, in my mind, those are the core concepts of SFB. Now, given that core concept of SFB, how do you, okay, now it comes down to, well, how do you implement that given these core concepts? How do you make them all intertwine and make it simple enough that it can be done quickly? Now, here comes the gotcha. Because there's a couple ways of doing this when it comes to weapons and speed and movement. Um, oh, there was another concept I forgot that I got written down here, but I forgot to hit on it, which is the whole idea of turn mode. That is, the faster you go, the more hexes you have to go forward before you can turn. Now obviously some people would like to have high energy turns, mid turn speed change, and all this kind of things. Okay, those aren't core. Those are nice to haves. But any game, because I'm actually, I don't know this for a fact. I'm willing to bet that when SFB was originally created, hets were not part of the game. Whether it was, I'm not sure if it was published like that or not. Well, at least when it was first construed, there was no hets, high energy turns. Because that's pretty. No, it's a different concept. So this game would not have high energy turns, which some people go, well, can't have that. I'm out of here. Well, then you're not going to enjoy it. Actually, this game is not for the. I was gonna say for the faint of heart, but I think that's over. It's extending it. That's stretching a little bit. Because of any of you have been listening to me long enough, and because I've talked about SFU ships before, that there are certain things that I really, really like. And that is the whole idea of pre-plotted movement. So the whole idea would be that you pre-plot your movement for the entire turn. Now, before you guys go, yeah, but how can you do that for an entire turn? Well, you can do it for an entire turn. But there's one thing I never mentioned. How many impulses are there in a turn? Because those of you who know SFB, who've been there from the beginning, or at the very least have read the rules from way back in the 80s. Yes, back in the 80s. Back in the 80s, with Volume 1, 2, and 3, when the original Commander's Edition, one thing that you could do, actually, I have not checked the rule book lately, so it's possible it might still be in there, which is you had the ability to not only have a 32 impulse chart, but you had a 16 and you had an 8. So basically, the whole idea was that it doesn't have to be 32 impulses. You can have so it's the whole idea. Actually, I think was for the if you everybody was moving at slower speed, like everyone was going below speed 16, then use a 16 impulse chart. If everyone's going below speed 8, use an 8 impulse chart. The idea is to simplify the process. In that case, if we actually ever did that, in my mind, you want to talk. Steve Cole talks about the ability to speed up the game, and that's one of the reasons why they did Federation Commander, was to have kind of a faster game, not necessarily Starfleet Battles Light, but a faster game. Well, the problem is, did we get a faster game from Federation Commander? That's debatable. Did it go as fast and simple as they wanted? No. I want to bet that the ultimate goal was not achieved. To me, that's fine. But this number keeps coming into my head now, and that is 6 impulses. 6 impulses. That means You can do a speed plot, for 6 moves, maximum 6 moves. That means you're moving speed 6. You do for every single impulse. And if someone says, "Oh, I can't do that," it's like, yes, you can. You're smart. If you play the SFB, you're smart. It just what happens is that it's a little bit of a guessing game. Which me, I think that's half the fun is having a guessing game. What is the whole idea of SFB? If you boil it down to its core, when it comes to tactics, is trying to outguess your opponent. I actually think that's most games, where the whole concept is that you're trying to outguess your opponent. You want to know, you're trying to figure out what is that opponent actually doing, or guessing what the opponent will actually do. Because that's how you win, is that you do that and you counteract what you think he's going to do. You plan for his. It's like even it's like chess. Same way where you're trying to anticipate your opponent's move. That's why, to me, the ultimate in this when it comes to SFB is the whole idea of pseudo versus real plasma torpedoes. It's a guessing game. I have to determine, is that plasma real or fake? Obviously, the cautious man, will not do anything. They will assume that it is real always until he knows. When it comes to the first plasma torpedo, the first plasma torpedo or plasma torpedo and a fake one is available. You're guessing. The cautious man will just assume that it's real and then say, okay, how much damage can I take from it, and go from that. And if it's fake, then you deal with the consequences. But obviously, you might even think, okay, if it's fake, you do this. If it's real, you do this, and you don't have to worry about the real one coming later. So that it's always a guessing game. So having a pre-plotted movement for 6 impulses, all that means is that you have to figure out where you want to do it and where you think your opponent will go. Now, there's one thing that I thought about, and I figured if we really want to get this thing moving, have it so that the game actually moves at quite a good pace. I mean, this movement. I mean, this could go flying. Another one is what I call pre-plotted action. Now, this is one of those things that makes some people just go, just scares them. But here's the thing: we don't for this game. We're not. The whole idea is to keep it moving, and then if someone wants to drop, they can drop. Because that's always the biggest issues with SFB games is that you start playing a game, and at some point, what do? You stop. You save the game. You might play it for an hour. You might play it for 2 hours. You might play it for 30 minutes. But you can then save and continue on later. But for that, you're doing all this waiting. Why are you doing this waiting? Because you're trying to decide what you're going to do. Now, and if someone just drops, and let's say that you try to have a large game with like 4 or 5 opponents. If one person drops, you're in deep trouble. Or if they walk away from the keyboard in the middle of a turn, you're in trouble. The whole idea of this is that you pre-plot your movement, you pre-plot your action. Now, the action, one thing I was thinking about when it comes to pre-plotting the action has to be, to a certain degree, play by email light. That is this. If you have a seeking weapon coming in at you, you fire your weapons, or you fire you fire so much at that seeking weapon. You know, you can say, well, you fire all the phasers at that seeking weapon, or you fire this at their seeking weapon. But there's some minor conditionals that can be set or have to be able to be set for this to work. At least if we have seeking weapons. If we don't have seeking weapons, I don't think conditionals are not an issue at that point. So obviously, what that means is a first go around, there are no seeking weapons because we want to start with a simplistic game. Because if everyone has just direct fire weapons, we're good. You can have it actually people. It can see if it's enough interest that people want more. If people want more, we can add seeking weapons. But one thing at a time, which is, of course, if you introduce a game, you have to also do some play testing. Then you have to worry about game balance. All these you have to through play testing. Then you can find out how balanced your game is. So that leaves what I was thinking about was starting with the basics. That is photons, disruptors, phasers. Those are the basics when it comes to direct fire weapons. And then later on, introduce drones and plasmas. Now, there's two things that obviously need to be added onto the discussion. One of those things, obviously, is going to be EA. I was thinking about this, and there's two ways of doing EA. Number one, you actually have a kind of EA where you're balancing weapons and speed. Well, i.e. having some kind of energy unit or action points or whatever, however you want to call it. Each unit would have a certain number of these action points. Let's call them action points, and you can either use it for one move, or you can use it for charging, using your weapon or kind of charging your weapon. This is SFB, which means everything's pre-allocated. Which, in my mind, simplifies things again, because if you pre-plot, I'm gonna put so much in for phasers. Now, here's the one thing that is not going to be SFB like, at least in my mind, is that phasers would not have capacitors. Phasers, you actually have to fire. You actually have to have. It's going to be more like FedCom in that regard, in that if you want to fire your phaser, you have to, charge it. At least that's one of the ideas. Now, the other idea that I have is there's no EA at all. You just set your speed to whatever you want it to be. Oh, well, I'm always going to set it to 6. Are you always going to set it to 6? Do you always going to want to be moving fast? Or do you want to move slow? Because the whole idea I thought with turn mode is that, speeds, if you move 1 to 3 hexes in a turn, that's turn mode of 1. If you're moving 4 to 6 hexes on a turn, then your turn mode is 2. Obviously, this is going to keep track of turn modes cross turns. And if you're not moving at all, you said, I'm going to go speed 0. At the very end of the turn, you can then tack. I'm thinking about either end or the very beginning of the turn. I'm not sure which at the moment. Probably the beginning would be better in that regard. So that's two ways. The whole idea with if you have no EA, if you have no EA, then it's purely the weapons are purely available on a per turn basis. Meaning, for example, photons. Photons are available once every other turn. Now, obviously, if you don't use it that second turn, you can push it onto the turn after that. So if you fire it on turn 1, it's available again on turn 3. Well, I mean, and then if you don't use it on turn 3, then you actually can fire it on turn 4 still, and that is fine. But you still have to, you know, I was gonna say, but you still have to charge them. But this is the non-EA one, so um, so and that's one way of doing it. And you can define what speed you want, because if you really think about it, you don't always want to go speed 6. When it comes to approaching, yes, you want to go speed 6. If you want to do, fire and just fly past your opponent, yeah, you want to go speed 6. But as you approach, remember, you're both plotting speeds. They're doing a whole movement plot, which is you're trying to outguess your opponent. If you try to outguess your opponent, when you get to, like, let's say you get to range 6, and you guess, okay, your opponent is going to move 2. It's gonna no, let's say, okay, you get to move speed 6, and you figure, oh, your opponent, he's gonna just go 6. He's go 6. So you go 6. What that means is after like 1 or 2 hexes, and you're like at an oblique or close to an oblique, you're going to want to fire then, and then keep going, because you have to remember, you have to also pre-plot your activity. What happens if he decides to go speed 1 or speed 2? Speed 2 meaning that he moves the first impulse. No, actually, no. It means he doesn't move until like the 3rd impulse, then moves the 6th impulse. So you're gonna be a lot farther distance in that case. So you might actually hit a different shield in that case. Now, some people, I think, aren't gonna like this whole idea. It's not gonna be their cup of tea, because there are some people, and I know I know of at least one person who. The reason why I say this is because I know this one person who was played by email, but he wanted every single impulse he had a break. And you know, that's okay when you're up close. But play by email, the whole idea is to let go. Let go of having to know every little itty bitty detail. Why do you let go of knowing every little bitty detail? Because you realize that details don't matter. It's not. When it comes to distances, if you're like range 30, does it matter if you side slip once or side slip twice, or you turn in or you don't, or you side slip in? No, it doesn't matter that much. In the long run of things, it does not matter. When you get closer, yes, things matter more. Now, as I said, this might not be a cup of tea for everybody, but again, if you've played Star Mata, like the oh geez, what was the edition? The edition before the Nova edition. I forget what that was. This is awful. But edition before the Nova edition, you basically had to do the same thing. You had to pre-plot your movement, and which is what got me interested in Star Mata to begin with, because I got tired of this whole, okay, pre-plot your amount of speed. You got this idea in your head what you want to do, and then slowly try to work through that as the turn went on. And then at the very end, for Stormata, you do your pre-plotted movement, and then then you do action at the very end. And that's fine. But I want it to be faster. Because as I said, the whole idea is that if you lose someone, you lose someone. Who cares? If they want in between turns, if they want to drop, fine. Have fun. Have some, like, it's more like BZ flag where you can drop in or get killed and you're out. Okay. You had your fun for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you're done. And then you can leave and you come back if you want to, or whatever. It all depends on how many are there, obviously. But and you could start with two, or if you want to, you can wait. You can get together a group of five and fly around and play. However you want to do it. You know. Now there are some things I still haven't gotten down the details on. Even some I still have some open questions, as I mentioned before. Some other questions obviously are shields. Here, this is always the balance. This is always the balance that SFB tries to achieve, and it does a pretty good job. And after what's it now, 30 years now? Probably, I think it's like been 30 years, possibly a little longer than that. I have to figure out when it actually came out. But that is balancing the weapons effectiveness, the amount of damage the weapon's going to do versus the amount of shield strength you're going to give for that ship. And in this case, the shield strength for each facing. Obviously, you can start off with something basic and simple, which is 360 degrees. Each shield arc is the same shield strength. That's something to do simple. Obviously, people that run SFB would probably squawk at that, and for good reason, because of in SFB or even FedCom, what you normally have is you have the front half is stronger than the back half at the very least. Obviously, like for the Klingons, usually it was like, okay, the shield number one was the strongest, and then you have 2 and 6 were a little weaker than shield number one, and then shield number 5 and 3 were a little bit less, and the rear shield was the least. If I recall correctly, I'm pretty sure that's the way the Klingons were set up. And then then of course the Hydrogens came along and they went, this doesn't work. So they reinforced the shield number 4 so they could have equal around the rear or half of the ship. But at the very least, have it so that the front half of the ship, the shields are stronger than the rear shields. So now the question is the amount of points. How much damage should a shield be able to take versus weapon strength, as in how many weapons and what kind of weapons are going to be allowed on the ships. And of course, lastly, internal strength of the ship, i.e., how much damage does it require to blow the ship up? And actually, it comes. There's also one core. It's not to me. Okay, here's the thing. I don't consider this a core component of SFB, though some people might consider it, and it kind of is to a certain degree. And that's the whole idea of damage allocation, i.e., you roll your damage, and depending upon how you roll, you either hit a weapon, a movement, like warp, or you just hit an internal, like a whole box. Me, for this game, what I was thinking of is have it like a fighter. Where the whole idea of a fighter is really, really simple. And that is you have so many number of points that takes to actually completely and utterly kill that fighter that's dead, just disintegrates. But there's a point which I think, if I recall correctly, it's 2/3. That's when it becomes crippled. Now, becomes an excellent question, which is, do we want to have that? Have it so there's the whole concept of crippling a ship. Because Oh, one thing I did not bring up, at least initially, the whole idea of this is single ships. Each player has their own ship. They do not have a fleet. They do not have a squadron. They have a single ship. Because in my mind, what normally happens with SFB? Let's be honest here. If you have a squadron, what you do, you take all that squadron and then you fire it on a single ship. The idea is to blow up that ship. And then so the first person who actually is able to destroy a ship while they win is what it ends up being, because they have the strength now on their side. So that's why it's like, okay, it's a single ship. Now, so damage allocation, I think the whole idea of having as a fighter now, the question is, do we want to have it so it's always full strength when it comes to weapons all the way until it dies? Or do we want to have it so that, okay, when you get to 2/3, then you lose like half your weapons? Because, well, fighters, you lose all but a phase of 3. That's fighters. But I don't think that's the way we want to go with a ship. Have it said, oh no, you lose everything, but you can fire a single little phaser. Pew pew. No, I don't think so. I think that's not what people would want. I think people would want to be able to fight to the bitter end. Now, the one thing we could do is force the ship to go slower. When you cripple the ship, okay, now you only can go max speed of 3. I think that's a better thing. Then they can't run away. They can still fight, but they can't run away. So they're still basically they're still in it. When it comes to the battle, they're still in it. Now, as I mentioned before, we do have the issue of energy of kind of an EA. And do we do an EA, or do we just have it so that the weapons are based off of turns? Or do you have actually action points where there are a certain number of action points which you use for movement versus your weapons? Do we want to actually introduce that concept? Don't know at the moment. That's one of those things that's still up in the air. I'm right now, I'm leaning towards not doing the EA and just have it so that your weapons just go through it. Now, number one thing is, obviously, after I write this all up, I have to play test it before anyone sees the light of day. I just want to get the whole idea of tonight is just to get the idea out there. Have people running through your head. Is this something that you're interested in? If you want to, I am me. No, I am me. Sorry. I'm thinking about my work. If you want to, feel free to send me an email at sfuoncall@gmail.com. That's one way you can do it. Obviously, on Twitter, you can DM me there, or you can DM me on Twitter. I actually have to. I don't remember if I have SFU on call, if I have that set up to be wide open or not. I.e., I don't have to be following you for you to DM me. I have to double check that. If it's not, I will have that open by tomorrow. So I think that's overall a good concept. Now, there's one thing that I have not yet mentioned, and what is one of those key aspects to this game. Because the only reason this works is because it's designed to be online. Obviously, you can play it offline. It just requires you to have a timer. The whole idea is to keep this game moving. Obviously, if you're playing offline, you can plan it all you want. But online, one of those key factors in my mind is that you have to have a deadline. You have to have there has to be a real time portion to this game. Um, if you're just playing by yourself against a robotic opponent, that doesn't matter. But when you're playing with other people involved, especially when you have multiple people, i.e., not just you and a friend, you and a friend and a friend and another guy that just walked in the door. And that is each EA will require you'll only be allowed at the moment. I'm thinking 5 minutes, 5 minutes for each turn, and then after 5 minutes is up, you all everyone. If they, if you want, I'll have it so you can submit early, but you can't submit late. It's going to be automatic. After 5 minutes, boom, your turn is up. Whether you're fully planned or not, you're done. And there will be a timer. The whole idea would be that there'll be a timer. You can see how much time you have left. Now, obviously, that might add some stress. Oh, good, because part of the reason why you have certain things like this, in real time, is that stress level. You want it to be like, okay, I got this, gotta get this done. You feel the pressure of the time limit. At the same time, you have the time to plan. In my mind, 5 minutes is good enough time to do everything because you're only planning for 6 impulses. This is not like SFB where you have the possibility of planning out for a full 32 impulses because even if you don't plan out the movement to the nth degree in SFB, you're still thinking 32 impulses in generic terms. Oh, I want to move this, move around here. If you move around here, I'll do this. Da, 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 da. And you spend all this time thinking about and guessing what your opponent's going to do. As is, I might, heck, I might go, okay, well, you got 2 minutes to do everything. One thing at a time. Let's first try 5 minutes. If 5 minutes doesn't work, then we'll if we find 5 minutes, we have everyone's just sitting around doing nothing. Obviously, if everyone can say, submit, then it will go immediate. But if everyone says, well, 5 minutes, it seems like we're all getting done beforehand. So why don't we crank up the notch so it's down to 2 minutes or down to 3? Because people might say, well, it's too slow. I want it to speed up. That's one thing that obviously we could do. But first, the basics. The first thing that really has to be worked out is weapon damage, number of internals, shield strength. Those are the three things that have to be worked out because that's what actually, in my mind, will maintain the balance. Now, actually, the funny thing is, I thought about this. I thought about actually Andros, and what would you do with an Andromedan? How would you add an Andromedan to this whole mix? Because I am the Andromedan. In which case, Andros would probably be added to the mix at some point. Now, obviously, the tough part about Andros is not. I was originally thinking about the displacement device, but to me, the tough part for Andros would be how do you do PA panels? Because the way the PA panels work when it comes to Andros is that they're both defensive and they're offensive, meaning that you get a certain amount of energy from the PA panel. So what might in that case, if we actually had an energy allocation, what I would have them do is probably have it so that there's a certain amount of damage would be taken out of the quote unquote shields. And of course, the shields then would be 180-degree shields. So it's a little different. So each turn, you get so much quote unquote energy out of it, and you have that, and that gets turned into action points. If we did actually, EA, and so that that would be the benefit of the Andromeda. Now, the bad part of it, obviously, is it's a 180-degree shield. Also, you might get 1 or 2 action points per turn to add on to your number of action points that you actually can use. Now, that's better than possibly the shields. Well, the shields also are free. They don't cost you anything. Maybe it might require. Wow. This got noted by Dave that the Rams just pulled off a 57-yard pass play. Wow, awesome. But anyhow, maybe for the Andromedans, they're required to have at least 1 action point just to keep their PA panels up. So it requires them. There's a cost involved there. Maybe you get so much damage. Okay, you get 2 action points brought into your system, but it's going to cost you 1 action point to actually have your PA panels up, and therefore you have that expense each and every turn. Things like that. Well, I'm going to see if I can do is write this up as a board game. Do some quick testing on a board, probably pen and paper first, when it comes to weapon strength and shield strength. Because the one thing about this, in my mind, is that the ships wouldn't be that big, because it wouldn't be like a standard cruiser SSD with all the internals. With the number of internals you usually can get for one of those suckers is between 70 and 100. I don't think anyone really wants to play that. What I was thinking about was more along the lines of maybe 20, 20 internals or something along those lines. I said the whole thing is a balancing act, and the question is, how do you balance it all out? What are the numbers that work? Obviously, here's the one, which to me is always the big thing, which is if we went for the larger numbers, then I would kind of be forced to do damage allocation so that we had it was split up into individual types of boxes, not just hull, generic like a fighter. You'd actually have to have some things which were for movement, some things which were just hull, some things which were weapons for the larger ships. If we ever went that large, I'm hoping to avoid that kind of thing. Obviously, if you want to have it so that more of a ever playing game, what might be required would be that you might actually add into the game actually kind of a neat idea, which is add onto the board recharge stations or recharge boxes that you can pick up on the board. And if you pick that up, what happens is that you're all fixed up, or at the very least, that your internals are fixed up, and maybe you grab another, a different fix up station, which is just for shields, things like that. I think it could be kind of cool. There's one thing I was thinking about, and unfortunately, what happened is that I was playing Duskers. For those of you who don't know what Duskers is, which is probably most of you, Duskers is a kind of an interesting game. It's a puzzle to a certain degree, in that you find you control these drones, these robots, basically, Um, and then you control these robots as you go on these derelict ships to find to collect um, salvage to whether that salvage is actually just scrap or it actually is other drones that you can pull. And the problem with that is that some of those you have like these nasty aliens that might destroy your drones, but also you're trying to find out what happened to all these derelict ships along the way. Now, the thing is, I haven't gotten far enough into Duskers to get to that point. Last time I played, I I knew that they have motion detectors that you can start, and the problem is the motion detectors don't always can't find always all the aliens. And that's what happened is I went to a room, there was an alien, he killed my drone, and unfortunately, I had no way of actually shutting because my drone was blocking the door. So it's like, darn. And it killed so many drones. I went, okay, I reset. So next time I play, I'm gonna start from the beginning. So, but the really cool thing about Duskers is it's a command line interface to a certain degree. You can actually control the drones by using the arrow keys. But you never touch the mouse. And then you can actually tell it like, oh, tell this drone navigate drone number 1 to room number 5, and they'll just there's an automated system which is just and it'll go to room 5, however that is, assuming that it can get there. Well, I was thinking about the same thing for this, which is the whole idea is that you could do it via command line interface, control completely the command line interface, because of obviously the tough part when it comes to the interface is actually would be the pre-plotting the movement of the actions. Now, actions you almost cannot do that completely using command line because you want to have certain actions you want to have some minor conditionals available too because there's minor conditionals that will allow you to um, to do as I said with the drones and all and so forth. But obviously the conditionals aren't really needed until you have seeking weapons. Because I think it's better if you have to guess where your opponent's going to be and you fire. Now you fire. You can say, "Oh, I fire all weapons facing your opponent," or you can fire. You know, or you can have it so that it fires a single phaser, or just one photon, or whatever. So that'd be kind of cool that way. I like the idea of having so it's never ending play. Meaning, have it so that you can just join the room and join the game at any time. And if someone's there, you can play against them. If there's no one there, then if you want to, you can roam around. Hey, roam around the board. You can find this piece or find this piece. These things maybe have a way of you actually be able to explore the board per se. Possibly even had, well, actually, would be really cool. Asteroids. Have it so that you can't go into the asteroids portions of the map, and you can't fire through them either against your opponents. So you can kind of play hide and seek, kind of a maze kind of thing. I think that'd be kind of cool. Obviously, um, I would probably want to start off with not having it, just have it open. But as I said, there's certain things that have to be worked out first, which mainly is the damage and defensive factors, that kind of thing. Well, I think we will wrap it up there. We had a nice little discussion about the game, an idea for a never-ending game based on the SFU universe using the core concepts of Starfleet Battles itself. So with that, I am Paul Franz, and I bid you a good night. Okay. does.